The hour of 6:30 having arrived, I'd like to call to order the regular Plan Commission meeting for the City of Columbus for November 13th, 2025. Mike, will you call the roll?
Bright, Traxler, Majewski,
Here.
Myers,
Here.
Monday,
Present.
Albright,
Present.
Finkler.
Here.
We
have a
have
quorum.
quorum. All right. All right. This meeting was appropriately posted and noticed in accordance with state law. Commissioners, there's an agenda in your packets. Please take a moment to review, and I'll entertain a motion to approve or amend.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have our agenda. There's also minutes from the October meeting in your packet. I'll entertain a motion to approve or amend.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. All right, moving on to new business. All right, so we have the first three items there are related to the same property. So the first two items are going to be a public hearing first and then a rezone, and then subsequent to the rezone is a mapping, right? We have to rezone before we can do the map. So, all right, so the first item is a public hearing regarding zoning map amendment at 546 Manning Street to include changes from R4 to R2 zoning and from RD to R2 zoning. So the whole of the two properties being rezoned to R2. Mike, do you want to give a
Yep.
short description here?
Then, a couple of items coming up here, that's the certified survey map to combine two lots. The city has an ordinance that says any one parcel needs to be zoned in one zoning category, no more than one zoning category. So you can't have rural development and R4 on the same parcel. That's one of our ordinances. So for the petitioner to combine these two lots, he has to rezone these to one category first before those lots can be combined. This was brought before the Plan Commission, I think in 2022, right? And was postponed until a zoning map amendment was applied for. And so that's why it's before you today. The comprehensive plan identifies this area as for single family, so the rezone is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The R2 district is the yellow areas adjacent to the parcels, so it'll be consistent with the zoning that's already there. And petitioner is here today, Mr. Rolke.
All right, so after having that introduction, I'll open the public hearing so any member of the public can comment if they so choose. So is any member of the public here wish to speak regarding this rezone? Chris, you can either choose to speak now, or you can speak to the commissioners when we move on to the next one, or you can choose to let it happen. All right.
I'm in favor.
Yeah. So noted. All right. For a second time, is there any member of the public that wishes to speak regarding this rezoning? Mike, were there any written or?
No written, no comments,
Okay.
no phone calls.
All right. For a third and final time, any member of the public who wishes to speak regarding this rezoning? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing portion And move on to item 3, which is consider and take action regarding the zoning map amendment for the parcels at 546 Manning Street. So, Commissioners, any questions or discussion? This one does seem pretty straightforward.
I can't see any reason why there'd be a problem with it.
Yep. All right, yep, the recommendation from staff was for approval, and I don't have any further comments on it, so. If none, I'll entertain a motion regarding the rezoning.
I'll move to approve the zoning map amendment for parcels at 546 Manning Street.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Rezoning is approved. Kind of rolls right into the next one. Now that the two parcels are rezoned to R2, we can consider and take action regarding the certified survey map. This is a straight-up consolidation of two parcels, right? Okay. Any questions, comments, discussion? It's already colored for you, Mike. You don't have to worry about getting outside the lines.
Is there any concern from your, Mike, from staff?
No concern?
Are we approving or recommending?
Recommending.
Yeah, it has to go to council still.
Yep.
If there's no further questions or discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to recommend the approval of the CSM for 546 Manning Street.
I can second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Recommend for approval. Look at that. You're not even going to miss supper, Chris.
So this will go to city council at the first meeting in December. It's we couldn't get it in the packet in time. So it's just the way that the meetings align. So it'll be the, whatever that first Tuesday of the month of December.
If it's the follow-up question, if it's approved in December, then the purpose of this was to, one of the purposes was to combine two tax parcels into one. Is there going to be a reassessment prior to the 2025 property tax deadline? Or will the process conclude in 2026?
My guess is the tax bills will be going out before this gets done, because this, after approval at city council, then it needs to be recorded at the county. So,
So the process will conclude in 2026?
it'll conclude, well, the CSM will, like, if you record it in December, it will conclude in 2025, but the tax bills, you won't see the effect of that until next year.
Because they'll have to reassess the one lot rather than the two.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Moving on to item 5, which we have consider and take action regarding the zoning code rewrite, zoning district permitting uses and bulk dimensions. So there was either a staff memo or maybe it was a memo from you in our packets. Yeah. Okay. So I see Mike handing over all the goods.
And then this is
Interesting. 'Cause it's all wireless,
Yeah, we just switched
so
it.
big TVs. And then is this
Yeah, that's,
talking about, okay.
all right. Let's try. Order of operations sometimes, maybe.
Yeah. You always want to put power in first.
Use that flash drive.
There we go.
Yay, okay.
I don't know what happened. I bumped something or wiggled it.
Don't move too much. Okay, thank you.
There you go.
Thanks to our resident ham radio operator.
Yeah. All right, again, Sonia from Vandewall. I think, was it just last month that I was here most recently? So you might not forget my name by next time, but just wanted to remind you just in case. In your packets is a memo. I think that was a 2-page narrative highlighting some key points. And then there were some complicated, or maybe not complicated, but just spreadsheets with a lot of cells on them that we'll talk through. So the purpose of today is to, we're not taking any action. It's again sort of getting your head nods and your comfortability with the direction that we're moving. Last time we talked about the audit memo, which kind of gave us a common framework to work from of like big picture goals for this project. And then we also reviewed input received so far from the Plan Commission and Council kickoff meetings and from the public workshop and the online survey. So those are all the inputs that we've had so far. Now we're taking that and we're creating the foundation for the zoning code. So the next time that we come, you'll probably start to see some actual language in ordinance form, but these are the puzzle pieces that we need to put that together. So that's kind of what this slide summarizes. We're looking at zoning districts, bulk dimensions, so all of the quantitative measures of setback distances, heights, lot coverage, and land uses, which are the permitted and the conditional land uses that may be allowed within the new zoning districts. I don't expect that we're going to get into detail on everything. I also didn't expect that you would have reviewed every single number and P and C on the spreadsheets. As we go through and develop part 1 of the zoning code, you will have an opportunity to refine things. These are the core elements. So a reminder of the outline of the code, the 10 chapters up there, and then the information that we're looking at today informs part 1, and part 2 is separate. Again, if you work from the top to the bottom, if you're a developer coming into town, you might start with some definitions at the beginning. You might look at where the zoning districts are. Within those zoning districts, you've identified, okay, mine is zoned SR1. What are the land uses allowed there? Now I've established my land uses. What are the setbacks that apply? Those are the types of things that are within part 1. Part 2 is more the look and feel of things, building materials, landscaping, parking standards, signage. We're going to deal with these in 2 separate parts. So the information that is now pointed out in green on the slide is again the core elements that we're looking at tonight.
Is there any way we can get a printout of this for our next meeting?
Get
I
it
mean,
maybe in
just-
advance and,
Just so we don't have
Yeah.
to try to read it.
yep. So an overview of what the zoning districts are. we will have an opportunity to work through these, but this is just a high level. So the existing zoning districts are on the left and the proposed new zoning districts are in the middle. We're proposing to remove the RD zoning district, which is really described as large lot, single family. That's not really aligning with the high level goals that we identified in the audit. And instead, we're going to use some different single family zoning districts, which is on the next line, SR1 and SR2. Those have some different lot sizes compared to the comparable district that you have today. And then we have MR1 and MR2 proposed on the next two lines, and those are your medium scale mixed residential and higher density multifamily residential. So they accommodate single family, duplexes, really the same sort of scale that you have in your existing code, but the lot sizes are different, and the dimensions show up differently in the tables, which we'll get into. The R5 on the last line is equivalent. So R5 is what you have today for mobile home. In the proposed zoning district, we call it MH for mobile home. The commercial and mixed use zoning districts, the proposed districts are in the middle of the screen. Downtown is really kind of a one-to-one translation from central business district to DMU, downtown mixed use. The commercial corridors are really a one-to-one translation, but we're combining the two of them. You have the B2 and the B3. We're putting them into one district called CMU, commercial corridors, corridor mixed use. P is really a one-to-one into a proposed zoning district called institutional. The next one is business park. This is something that I'll want feedback on as we go. We don't have to make a decision today. And this is whether you want a special zoning district for business park. For example, you might have higher design standards in the business park, but similar land uses in the light industrial zoning district. So you could just use light industrial, but if you wanted to separate them out and have the business park really cover areas like the gateway overlay, where you might have higher design standards, then it might make sense to have two separate zoning districts. Otherwise, for industrial, we have two, the LI and the heavy industrial HI, which is not dissimilar to what you have today. We'll talk about these as we go. The ag zoning district is really a different version of your RD. It's more focused on the rural holding to be used when parcels are annexed or when there's a remnant parcel, but it's not as focused as your existing RD is around being large lot single family. We're also proposing a park and rec district, conservancy for environmental, and then I'll just mention the last one is IOA, intensive outdoor activity. We're proposing this as a category that might not ever be mapped, but it allows you that discretion that we talked about last time, where if you have a potentially very high impact land use like a quarry or a speed track or something that could have high nuisance, then you would be able to say those uses are only allowed in this IOA zoning district and you have to rezone to be able to use it. That way you don't find yourself in a situation where quarry is allowed in the SR1 and it's a conditional use and you have to approve it because the state changed the standards for conditional use permits and your hands are really tied in whether to deny or approve those. So the purpose of this is it gives you some protection for those higher impact land uses. A little bit of orientation here to help explain how to read the tables. The bulk, I mentioned these are the quantitative issues, the numbers like lot sizes. Is it 8,000 square feet minimum lot size? The setback being the front, side yard, rear yard for both the principal structure and accessory, lot coverage, area of the lot to be covered by buildings, heights, and then the land use table is the land uses allowed within those zoning districts identified by P's and C's. P is a permitted by right, C is a conditional use. If there's no P and no C, then it's prohibited. Here's a visual to help explain that a little bit further. Black is text that is in your existing code. So in this example, the R1, if you go to minimum lot area, about halfway down the table, you can see 12,150 square feet is the minimum lot size today. The new language is in red so that you can clearly see what the changes are. And the proposed new minimum lot size for that zoning district is 8,000 square feet. Where you have black italicized text, that's where we're showing that something would be removed. For example, minimum floor area is a metric on the left side, and we are proposing that that standard be removed from the code completely. Same with navigating the land use table.
So
Go ahead.
those recommended in red, I assume they're recommended?
Yes.
Are they more the standard, or is that just something that,
Yeah. So where did we come up with these numbers? Basically, they are more modern standards for the most part, to, I guess, be very succinct, but they reflect the goals that we talked about in the previous meeting. So for example, if we want to make housing more affordable, then maybe we have a smaller minimum lot size. It's not very common to have a 12,000 square foot lot size. That's big compared to comparable communities and what modern development requires and the cost of housing today. So for your standard single family zoning district, we propose 8,000. We also provide another option, which is the next column over, with the new zoning district called SR2, where we propose a 5,000 square foot minimum. That furthers those goals I just mentioned even more. But the reason that we have two is because the 8,000 square foot minimum can be applied in those areas where you have larger lot single family today to sort of protect the neighborhood character. A lot of communities find and neighborhoods find that to be a preference, because if we changed their minimum lot size to 5,000 or 4,000, all of a sudden you can subdivide your property and your neighbor can subdivide their property, and the character of that neighborhood could change dramatically. So we're trying to both advance some of the goals and provide more options while adjusting for existing development and providing some protection for that as well. You go one more column over, the MR1, you can see the minimum lot size is, there are some options. So the 3,000 square foot, there's some asterisks. That is when it's alley loaded development. So where the garage is in the rear of the house and you're pulling into the garage via the alley. That's not something that you maybe have in a new development today. If a developer came in and said, we want to do this, then you would have the ability to say yes or no, we're going to rezone to MR1. And that would apply to only that, area zone that way. It wouldn't apply to your existing single family stock. Again, just helping to navigate the land use table, the same thing, black is existing, red is proposed. Within the land use table, on the far left column, you'll see a lot of red words. Today you really have limited accessory land uses, for example. That's the category that we're looking at here. You have drive-through facility and some variations of garage. We've expanded the list of accessory land uses, and there are a lot of new ones in here that we'll need to get familiar with. Accessory dwelling unit is highlighted in red text, so that's a proposed new land use. And then if you follow the P's across the whole table, you can see that it's recommended as permitted in every zoning district. These are the things that we'll make sure to pull out as big policy decisions. That's a pretty big change. If you don't allow accessory dwelling units today, is that something that you want to do? And then having this as a P would allow it as a permitted use in a lot of zoning districts. Similarly, home occupation is the last one on the line there. I don't know how many of these come forward to Plan Commission, but they're currently listed as a C for conditional use. So if you have someone that wants to run a home-based business out of their house, they have their own office, they're their only employee, maybe they're running a sewing alteration business or something like that, they have to come to the Plan Commission right now for a conditional use permit. We've changed that to a P. And then when you read the definition of home occupation, it will explain what standards need to be met in order to get that P for permitted use. And you don't have to go through the public hearing step and the conditional use permit coming to Plan Commission. So right now, I'm just trying to orient you to all of that. We'll be able to, these aren't final policy decisions or anything. But the proposed changes as a big picture, there are significantly fewer overall conditional use permits. And the alternative approach is that they're now oriented to be permitted by right, where you don't have to come to Plan Commission, or prohibited. And this comes from 2017 Act 67 that says in order to deny a conditional use permit, you must have substantial evidence in order to deny it. So really, really tying your hands. That's why most communities are moving in this direction. Big picture change number 2 is that we've grouped a lot of land uses together. I'll show you an example later, so I'll save my breath on that. And then we're trying to simplify the regulations, take out standards where they're not really achieving a goal or where we don't need it, and just try to make it easier to understand. So now this slide follows the handout that was in your packet of 10 issues that we could start discussing tonight. 6 of them fall under the bulk standards category and 4 fall under land uses. And feel free to interrupt us with questions as we go. We talked about this a little bit. Kind of a big theme or change in the bulk standards is reducing the setbacks and lot sizes. We talked about the 12,000 square foot minimum going to 8,000, for example. You can kind of see that theme across the table. Bulk standard number 2 that I wanted to point out is simplifying standards. So minimum floor area. These are regulations that you would find if you're, for example, in a single family zoning district and you're figuring out what kind of home can I build. We're going to retain minimum lot area. We're going to have lot width requirement. But do we need to have a minimum floor area? So that would be like square feet by unit type. So some older codes you must have at least 800 square feet in order to have that detached single family home. The prevailing trend right now is to remove that and instead defer to the building code. The building code will say, like, if you have a 2-bedroom home, you need to have minimum square footage for the bedrooms. You need to have a bathroom and a minimum square footage for the kitchen. So the idea here is, instead of having an overlapping zoning regulation on top of the building code, just defer to the building code and allow the compliant home to be built on the zoned lot. So that's just an example of where we're trying to remove that overlap. Same with minimum lot size per unit. So you have a minimum lot area, 8,000 square feet. But if it's a multifamily development, it might also say, you also have to have 2,500 square feet per unit. And then if you have 10 units, you have to multiply that times the 2,500 square feet per unit, and you come up with a new number that might be different than what the minimum lot area is. So it's kind of a double whammy of, you might meet the minimum lot area, but we're also trying to regulate and require a bigger lot the more units you have. The theory here is that instead we have things like a setback and a building height that keep the form of the building to something that you've all decided on as the city if you approve those standards as the Plan Commission and the council, and that you don't need to have this additional density regulation that can be seen as an additional barrier to development. Increased height, this is something that you might want to sit with and look at, but another general trend in zoning code revisions is to increase the allowable height of buildings to reflect modern development. So a lot of developers will say, the area between floors is getting thicker, essentially, or taller, because of the need to accommodate HVAC equipment or whatever else it is that, is leading to a per story height of 12 to 14 feet. So if you are trying to build a 3-story building that's allowed in your zoning districts today, but you have a maximum height that prohibits you from actually meeting those modern development standards, then the maximum height is going to be a barrier to development. So in this table, you can see on the far right column and compare that to the second column to see how the height is proposed to be increased in those districts. That's just what I explained. Something to look at as you are able to sit with these tables, how accessory structures are dealt with. And the 2-page memo highlighted this. The code right now uses special exceptions where you can come to the Plan Commission or with a CUP or a special request to have taller buildings and more lot coverage, consistent with everything we've been talking about. We want to remove those CUPs and have predictable standards instead. I'll let you refer to the handout to sit with the changes there. I think overall the message with accessory structures is that we're retaining what you have, but then moving in a little bit more flexible direction on some of these. There's a few bullet points that describe that further in the handout. We'll have to decide what we want to do with a few select design considerations. So right now you do not have design standards for garages. A lot of communities don't want to get into the business of regulating design on a single family home. But it is also very common to think about how to treat the garage. I think in the 90s, snout houses got a really bad reputation, and those are the thrust garage situations where you drive down the road and the garage is all that you see. You don't really see a front door. It's, in planning and zoning best practices, not really a conducive environment for pedestrians or neighborly interactions, and you just see the car. If that is something that you're interested in regulating, then then you might want to limit the garage protrusion in front of the house. And there are different ways that you can do this. You can have it just be even with the face of the house. You could have it be 2 feet back. Or the city of Madison, for example, just changed theirs to allow you to be 4 feet forward. They did that based on feedback from the builder community that a 4-foot garage thrust really helps make an efficient floor plan layout. I can't speak to all of the details there, but that was what they felt was a balance between listening to the builder community and not allowing it to be 10 feet forward or 24 feet if it's the full, depth of the garage. I do believe, is it the Redbud Trail development has a lot of garages in front. So if this is not something that is a concern, then we'd be able to remove language like this from the draft code. If you did want to limit that and put it in the code now, then something like Redbud Trail in the future would have to use a PUD. I think they used a PUD in the first place, but that's just an example of, an implication of a decision like this. And I'm going to go back one to porches. So the front setback line is yellow from the blue property line. And we also tend to allow protrusions for certain things, like a window well on the side of the house can go into the setback, or steps to get to your front door can go into the setback. It's also common to allow an unenclosed front porch, and you might allow that protrusion to be 8 feet or 10 feet. And again, that can allow more flexibility. It can allow that front porch to add to the neighborhood character by allowing you to sit on your front porch and wave to your neighbors. It's just a combination of those types of theories about why this type of allowance might be in the code. So that's a decision that you can make too, if you want to allow porches to be closer. Common theme that you keep hearing me talk about is reducing conditional use permits. Just wanted to share one example. It's called P today. Your institutional zoning district is what we're calling it moving forward, has no standards in it. I think that is correct, Mike. It's very, very wide open. It's kind of like come to the plan commission with a CUP and we'll tell you if it's right or not. We propose, you'll notice in the table, now that I've explained it, that there are now numbers there instead of it being wide open. That's to give you that protection, more predictable standards so that people know what they're using.
An example of institutional is I've had one inquiry and one actual request to put a shed on school property. Guess what they have to do to put it was a stage, a stage or shed, one of the two, I can't remember. But to do that, they have to apply for a conditional use permit because there's no setback standards. If we had the setback standards, and we allowed things like that permitted, we'd be able to just administratively issue a permit. So right now, it's very cumbersome. Or let's say a church wanted to add something that was new in an institutional district, or it's usually a school. They'd have to go through that, have a public hearing, and it's way more, very inefficient and cumbersome, and not responsive to what we want to achieve for people.
And then even when it gets here, if you had a concern, you have no basis on which to deny it. You know, it'd be, here's the shed, well, it doesn't say that there's a setback. So now if you want to impose a setback, it needs to be based on substantial evidence. Kind of go through the
So it
the
just
loops.
becomes a paperwork and
Yeah.
administrative shuffle.
Yes,
with no
And the cost
benefit.
of the person that's asking for it
yep, yep,
and our time.
yep.
No value added is the phrase I like to use.
And so that, just to push that forward more, as you sit with these longer and after hearing the explanations, you're making a decision that if there's a setback that you're comfortable with, that becomes a permitted use. Because a lot of communities get concerned about removing their ability to have input. But the input based on the state law change has driven you more to like, what is the legislative decision that you want to make? What is the setback? Do you want to allow it as a land use or not? So that's why these are important to get those things right and put the right land uses in the right districts. And I think I have another example that we can use to talk through that as well coming up here soon. So your land use definitions overall, this was a big theme. You have a lot of specific land uses, and you might notice in the proposed code that they're more grouped together. So the general practice is if someone comes to you with a land use and it's not listed in the code, it's prohibited. If I come to you with a dog grooming business, but you only have like barber shop listed in the code, then the zoning administrator has to determine, is this a facility that allows for animal care and handling, or, you know, just to use an example of like when you get into that level of specificity, it's not helpful because then you have to make a lot of interpretations. So we instead group things and then provide examples within that, and it helps the zoning administrator make more clear interpretations and find, you know, if you get a brand new land use that the code didn't anticipate, you're able to think about that and say, is that very similar to this that we do have, instead of having to say it's prohibited because it's not in there. So, for example, we propose using indoor institutional. Your code has a lot of things that could fall into that category. Churches, different types of schools, library. But really, the land use impacts of these things are very similar. They'll have similar parking needs, setbacks, hours of operation. So they are grouped into this category called indoor institutional, and it cleans up the list in the tables.
Do you go so far as to use language like such as, or including but not limited to?
Yeah.
And describe like the kind of thing that would fall into the bucket, even if you don't
Yep.
name the thing and put it in the bucket?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And I suppose there's a little bit of an art to even doing that, right? Because you don't want to throw the door so wide open
Yeah.
that it's
Yep. And then
just
there.
equally as confusing, but on the wide open end.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's the idea, right?
Yes. Now here's an example where you could follow that same theme, or you might find value in being more specific. So we have these broad groups called heavy industrial and light industrial, and light industrial is going to be permitted in the light industrial zoning district, and that's going to include a manufacturing business where all of the uses happen indoors. A heavy industrial is going to include land uses where there might be some outdoor storage or heavier odor or noise. And there's some distinction between the types of uses that fall into those categories. Data center came up at the last meeting, and we know that we don't want to get so specific that every time a land use becomes a concern, you now have the first example where you have a list of 500 land uses to cover everything that comes forward. But data center is something that, you could add it to the list on the left, and you could have heavy industrial land uses, you could have light industrial land uses, and then you could have something that very specifically says data center. And that way you know exactly what it is. You might have built-in regulations. If it comes forward, it's, a permitted use only in the IOA, intensive outdoor activity zoning district, and you have to rezone in order to allow something like that. Or you might recognize that there's variation. Smaller scale data centers have been around for a long time. They're in communities, people don't even notice them.
Right next to the library,
Okay.
right across the street.
It was humming away when I
Yeah.
passed there this evening after I dropped off my mail, but that's the first time I've ever noticed it.
Yeah. And the large scale, of course, it's in the news every day, is a much different impact. So, we'll look for some feedback from you on this. Maybe we'll propose something that we think is a good fit to start with. But I think giving communities protection right now for the large scale data centers so that you can make a decision that's best for the community is maybe a wise way to go. So like a very large scale data center you could have that fall into heavy industrial, or you could have it as a separate land use and that be only allowed in a different type of zoning district. But the small scale, something less than 20,000 square feet, that's not the same sort of land use impacts that we're seeing and concern. Maybe that's allowed in light industrial if the noise limits are complied with and things like that. So just wanted to talk through these two examples as a way to explain why the land use categories are the way that they are.
I have a quick question. Can these be, can TVs be tilted? So like, could that screen be tilted
Should we just sit out
this way?
there?
Or, I'm just asking, can you tilt these at all so that, like, that one's going this way and then that one would be going this way, or not?
I don't think the TVs were put up for us.
No, they're for.
They're put up for the,
Yeah, audio,
Okay.
audience. Yeah, because council has tablets, and usually whoever's
Oh, okay.
needs has printouts or their own devices.
And you do have the option to bring in your own tablets or laptops and just link into the
And it
city
would connect to
website.
that.
And there's very limited ability to move them where they're at right now, because there's literally nothing to.
We're in an old fire
Support.
station right now.
Is there any reason we can't sit in the audience seats to watch this?
Again,
Will we need to come to the mic if we have a question? What?
Yes.
That's ironic. Will we need to come to the mic if we have a question?
I'm almost done with this
Yeah,
slide
okay.
deck, and
All right. Well,
next time I'll.
something to keep in mind. Yep.
We can get slide decks ahead of time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will do that.
Yeah.
Thank you. We've kind of covered this, but wanted to show an example of how the IOA, the intensive zoning district, works with an example for quarrying or extraction. Right now, the black for the C shows that it's a conditional use in your RD district, your R1, your R2 and 3, I1, I2. You effectively wouldn't be able to prohibit a quarry if it came forward with a CUP application in any of those districts unless you based it on substantial evidence. So we have removed it as a C from all of those categories and put it as a P for permitted use in the zoning district that you'd have to rezone to. I think 2 more example slides here. Just wanted to highlight mixed use. So in your CBD, the first column there, that's your downtown zoning district. Go all the way to the bottom. P allows a mixed use building. We also propose a P for a mixed use building. I think we want to talk about when we get there, what does that exactly mean? Do you allow ground floor residential, or do you require commercial on the first floor in your downtown? And I might not have that part of your code memorized right now, but that'll be a decision to make sure that we have right.
Right now in the downtown district, you can have residential on the main floor as a conditional use.
Okay, so yeah, we'd clean that up and give you some standards to decide. And then likewise in the next one over, your more business districts, you can have a mixed use building as a conditional use. We added that as a P, but in that zoning district, it might look different because it's not the historic downtown. So you might have different standards. Likewise, if you go to the top line that I have highlighted in yellow, apartments, this is maybe something that we would want to change. Can you have standalone apartments downtown? Probably not. It needs to have some sort of commercial on the ground floor. So this might be something where we delete that P. So you can only have mixed use. You wouldn't be able to have just residential in your downtown. Accessory land uses, I pointed this out already a little bit, but with this explanation now you can kind of look at the tables a little bit more to see where all the new P's and C's are. And that was 10 issues to help pull out as examples for how to read the tables and to start to think about these. The next step would be these get translated into the actual code. So, if there are any major issues that you have, you're like, I really don't want to go in the direction where we have this zoning district, then you might provide that. If you have that feedback now, if you need to think about it, you can get in touch with Mike, and we can consider that when we go into the next stage. If you're like, accessory dwelling units, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. We will point out that language when we get to that part of draft 1. This is sort of feeding the information in a smaller dose before you get the whole narrative document that puts it all into words. And that's a long part, so that we have a couple of back and forths on before it gets to you next. That's it.
That's all?
I think that was a lot.
So, in the spirit of kind of asking about big picture things. If anybody's got some big picture items or sort of directional items, that's what we want to talk about here. I mean, I've got a couple such things. I don't know if others have some things, or if I do a couple of these, kind of give the flavor of maybe the big picture stuff. I didn't spend time on the tables. Those were just too dense.
Well, and they're too hard to read.
Don't
Yeah.
include them
Yeah, it was-
in the packet.
It was
I mean,
have
they're
to
ridiculous.
it was too dense. They're important, but yeah.
They're not important.
Well,
Can you read it?
they'd be important.
You can zoom in on
It's
a
important
computer
enough
screen.
to
That's
be able to
how
read.
you need to read it.
I'm predicating this by saying I did not look at those.
Yeah.
I did take a look at the definitions. So I guess one thing tell me if this is sort of the X 1,000-foot view that you're looking for. Like the accessory dwelling units. Like in that definition, I wasn't certain how it differed from a live/work definition. And then I guess it felt like that had some holes in it, like it wasn't super well defined. Like I thought of must it be smaller than the main residence? What if you had two identical residences on the same lot? It didn't feel like that's what we wanted to allow. We were trying to allow maybe a smaller residence that it could be rented out. It wouldn't necessarily have to be by a relative or whatever. But so I guess big picture, it didn't quite seem like that definition was coalescing around the exact type of thing we want. And when I say exact, I don't mean that really granular thing that we were trying to avoid. So I don't know if I'm articulating it correctly, but like I said, I thought of a couple scenarios where I'm like, two identical units on the same lot. I don't think that's what we want.
Right.
Or what we're looking for there, right?
Okay.
So.
Yep. And I'll just
So something like that. I wasn't certain what the difference between intensive outdoor activity versus outdoor commercial entertainment. Those two definitions really read very similarly to me. And maybe that's by design. Maybe you want some cases where the administrator has the flexibility to say, well, there's this thing and it can go either way.
Yeah.
But if that's not the flexibility you wanted, it seemed like there was a lot of overlap there.
Okay.
The outdoor recreation one also seemed very similar, but I also recognize that was in the institutional category, not the commercial category like the other two were. Maybe that was a distinguishing feature.
Yep.
If you don't mind.
Yeah.
My understanding of it is this intensive outdoor activity, the example being like, if we want to say that's the zoning that a quarry can go in. Something that could be controversial, that we truly want to take a look at. Those kind of items go into that zoning, where other outdoor things, where you truly want to have a place for them, there might be land zoned for it, but my understanding was that intensive outdoor activity zoning is really something that is our new tool to have a say in where some undesirable things might be.
And outdoor commercial entertainment is supposed to be volleyball league, associated with a tavern use, or patio seating at a restaurant that's outdoor, or an area where there might be live music playing associated with a business outdoors. So those are some examples that wouldn't fall into the IOA, intensive outdoor activity. But your point is make sure that those are reading clearly, and I'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I mean, those were good examples that you just gave, but in my reading of the intensive outdoor activity definition, it was things that were going to generate a lot of traffic, maybe a lot of noise, things like that, which all those things you just named have the potential of doing that also. So that's where I got a little bit confused.
Yep.
I am wondering if we do need one more tier larger of residential development.
Okay.
Just thinking of, there are a few subdivisions in town, although I don't even know if they have any empty lots anymore, where the lots are large enough that they could probably get split in half and then meet the new minimum. And I'm quite certain that would disrupt the character of those neighborhoods.
Okay.
So,
It's like maybe
Like around the golf course,
Yeah.
the areas with larger lots, is
Right.
what you're suggesting.
Kestrel
Right.
Ridge.
I agree with
right,
that.
Kestrel
right.
Ridge area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I would agree with that.
If a subdivider says, yeah, there's a market for these types of larger lots and wants to market it as such, hedge against that floor being too low, right?
Yeah.
Because, if you have an 8,000 square foot minimum, that doesn't preclude somebody from creating a subdivision that has 20,000 square foot lots.
Right.
But if they do that, they're looking for a certain style of development, a certain feel,
Over-
all that kind of stuff.
Over by Grandview Court, and Vista Circle, like I just did one on Vista Circle, it's 10,000 square feet. But there's one really, really large home over there with like a basketball court or something.
Oh, yeah, the $1 million house.
And then, but then one on Grandview Court here, I'm just gonna measure one quick, at the back end of the cul-de-sac. It looks bigger than the other ones. But a lot of these in that subdivision really aren't quite as big as you might think. So that one is 17,000.
So that would be if that was the prevailing pattern, that would be a really good example of like
Yeah.
17,000 square
But
feet
we
they
can,
could divide.
we can take a
Yeah,
closer look at.
I want to avoid that inadvertent consequence.
Yeah.
And then also over by like Brookside and over there, we can take, those
Yeah.
are some larger lots, but
Yep.
I think those are really still pretty modest.
Yeah.
Overall.
So maybe we have another district that has a 10,000 square foot minimum or 12 if there's a certain area that needs that.
Yeah.
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 And I should mention too, just so you know what's coming, we'll do a zoning map test where we go through parcel by parcel and we apply the new zoning district. And that will reveal some more, analysis of, do we really need this? Well, we went through the whole city and we don't find a place to put that district that maybe we need. You can always put it in and then take it out later if you find that it's not necessary. Or keep it in if you don't think it hurts anything, so,
Yep. Yeah. It's like come up with a workflow
yeah.
or a flow chart. You try to break it. If you can't, well, okay,
Yeah.
it works. Anybody else can have a turn too.
I like the idea of downtown not just being able to have an apartment building, that everything has to be commercial under it.
So I was curious about the Tremont though. So, I
That's
mean.
commercial.
Is that still gonna be, is that considered a hotel? Or is that considered like a boarding house? I'm not real super familiar with it, so I was just more curious.
Well, it's vacant right now.
Yeah, it's gonna have commercial on the bottom.
Commercial on the bottom and apartments.
And
the
apartments on
second
the
and-
top?
Second and third floors, yes.
Okay.
Is the zone driving that, or is that just what's happening?
That's what they want for the project.
So the zone is not driving it?
Correct. What's unique about where we have our downtown central business district zoning is the area just off, adjacent to the Guile building to the east, between there and the Antique Mall. There's a lot of residential homes there without any kind of commercial, but we have that in the central business district. And what gets more challenging when you look at our future land use plan and the comprehensive plan, it doesn't quite jive with that. So one of these things, when we get to the zoning map thing, and we may have to adjust our future land use map a little bit so we're gonna jump probably in this process from the zoning world back into the planning world a little bit to kind of help clean things up, because we in the way we vision downtown, we may say, yeah, we want stuff on Ludington and James to be commercial, and stuff on East Water to be commercial, up around the antique mall to the water plant. But then that stuff that kind of is inside that curl of zoning, we may want that to be a higher density residential. So we have some new tools, so we have to kind of take a fresh look at that. But that's one things we've looked at, that, you know, really defining what the downtown district really is from a planning and a zoning perspective.
So I have a couple questions, and so my first question is, if we wanted to do research on this, and what, based on what you've provided and what the going norm is, what would you recommend, you know, different things to look at? Just to get a comfort level with that's what the mainstream communities are doing?
Mm-hmm.
Just as commuting specifically, or?
Right, so there are probably statewide resources, there are national APA resources, but trying to think of something that you could review that allows for comparison. There might be, you know, issue specific if you wanted to ADUs. There's so much out there.
Well, and maybe I'm overthinking this. So you were talking about doing an 8,000 square foot lot. And so do we have a height restriction? So if I have an 8,000 square foot lot, which is a small footprint, but if I wanted to build a 2-flat on that, is that something that could be done? Or are we saying that an 8,000 square foot lot would only be available for one home instead of like a 2-flat? And then what about the height? Do we have height restrictions?
I'm just seeing if I have an example to talk from. I think this one. Unfortunately, that's the accessory land uses. So in the table, the 8,000 square foot lot size is here in red. And at the top, that's the SR1 zoning district. So if you wanted to figure out what are the land uses that are allowed in that zoning district, you're looking at the bulk table now, then you would go to the land use table. And the SR1 is really going to be single family only. So a single family detached home on an 8,000 square foot lot. But if you're in the jump over 2 columns, the MR1, that is going to allow other land uses. So that might allow the 2-flat.
So the 2-flat would, so say that again? So I'm in the MR1, and are you saying a 2-flat with the lot would need to be 12,000 square feet?
That's the black, if you just ignore that, that's your existing code. But
Okay.
the land uses that would be allowed on a 5,000 square foot lot in the MR1, you could have a single family home or a twin home. Yep, so a single family would be allowed in the MR1, and a twin home, duplex, or 2-flat is allowed in the MR1. So you're kind of putting two things together.
So she shows that in one, the red is what would be permitted to have dwelling or twin home or duplex or 2-flat, but not in an R1. Okay.
And I could give you a list of zoning codes that have been recently adopted. You could flip through, it's not going to be like this, or if there are specific questions like ADU, there are a ton of resources on. I'm just trying to answer your initial question.
No,
directly.
so I mean, this is a lot, right?
Yep,
I mean, I'm sure you probably understand this the most of everybody.
I had to spend an hour and a half before coming to just like.
So, and of course, I'm a researcher, you know, so I need to understand. So, I mean, I didn't realize when I looked through it and everything, I'm like, oh my God, I have like a gazillion questions. I don't know if they're smart questions or not, because I start looking at that stuff and then my brain starts going crazy. Okay, so then do we have a height restriction in regards to like, buildings in the
Yes.
city? So, I mean, we're building a two-story apartment building. Could they have done 3 over on the farm?
They are doing 3. They
They are
just started
doing
the 3rd level.
Oh,
There was a slide on that. Is the question that you're asking is how she came up with these numbers? Are they
What I'm
industry
asking-
standards?
so what I'm concerned about is I want to make sure that we're as mainstream as possible, because we want to make this easy for people. We don't want people to have to come here for every little thing. But I'm also the type of person that if I'm starting at A, I have to work myself through M, thinking about, okay, what could potentially come up, right? And that's just how I'm an accountant, so.
You're right, this is a lot, and like when I first started looking at this, I was, bulk table, but I'd look at it for a while,
Yeah.
give it a rest, go back and look at it, and what I see overall is really kind of this meeting, really addressing the challenges we've had, where people want to do some things on their property, but the front, especially in the older parts of the city, the front corner, or what they call here street side setback is 25 feet and doesn't allow encroachments for porches or decks, and we can't permit that, and so they have to do something way different than they wanted to do. So a lot of these things really give more flexibility for existing improvements, and I think that's a really big, like the porch encroachment, open porch encroachment, and some of these changes in setbacks really make a difference for doing things. The height piece is important, as you mentioned. The space between floors and newer development gets so there's newer heights in there. But I really see a lot of this, especially we have B2 and B3 zoning districts. It was again, over-regulating.
Okay.
And so combining those together makes it simpler.
So-
I think this all kind of between the simplification and creating reasonable minimum and maximum standards gives people the development box in which to do what they want to do.
Okay, so let me rephrase. So if we were gonna put an apartment building on Tower Drive, could I put a 5-story apartment building on Tower Drive? And then, because then my concern on that, you're putting that many more people into that neighborhood, you're making it much more high density. So,
Under this current one, I don't have the M4 or the MR, what is it, MR2?
Yep.
MR2 one, I mean, that, it's right now zoned R4, so it would depend under the new code what it would end up being zoned ultimately, right?
so that if it's technically R4, so what is how many stories could you put, how big of an apartment building could you
That
put
is
on
a
there?
4-story.
So 4-story?
Yeah.
So I could put a 4-story apartment building on there, but not 5 without getting some kind of whatever.
Could do 5, but gotta be short people.
No. If 5
Well,
people, it would
and
be
honestly,
for
some of the,
my size people.
this might come back to where some of these things, that when you talk about how many stories it's gonna be, if you look at what's going on in the area, kind of behind Costco to American Parkway, that whole area where you see a lot of apartment development, I'm cheating, I'm looking at things on Google Streets to refresh myself with what you see being built in these areas. And I think there's kind of a limit to what you get because of fire protection and building methods. The developers like to build with wood. It's cheap.
Right.
And at some point, when you get too high, you have more fire protection rules that come in. So existing national codes probably limit some of what you're going to see there. What I'm almost seeing as a bigger question before us as a group is, let's look at that same area. Imagine if you've ever been on Harmony Drive behind Costco. There is some very small single-family lots back there. that are done in a very, they're new homes, but they're done in a very traditional neighborhood kind of way where there's small lots. It reminds me of the old neighborhood I used to live in La Crosse.
They have steps going up to the front doors.
Yeah, they have, the garages
So
might be in
there's
the
like,
back.
it's row
Yeah,
homes, yeah.
And, before these changes, did we have that? And do we like the idea of doing that, or don't we? I mean, everyone's got opinions about what they want to see in their community. I like the way this was set up so that the existing neighborhood's character wouldn't have the ability to change so much, but a new neighborhood could be developed, which could make it more affordable for people to have a home that don't need a huge yard, that don't need all that extra space. And so that, I think it's nice to have those options, and I think if I'm seeing what we're doing here, we're opening it up to more of that.
Yes, I think that's a good summary. It is a ton of information. I absolutely understand that. And you're just really trying to see, there are small adjustments to the numbers. That's really in the theme of like modernizing. But where there are wholesale changes, it might be like in a new zoning district. Like you said, if there's a new development that's alley loaded, like if you don't have that today, we're providing a zoning district where you could use that. That won't impact existing development. And we don't want to create a bunch of non-conforming situations or allow for drastic change. So it's kind of that blend. And you're putting together the zoning districts across the top, the land uses, the bulk standards. As we go, I think it's on us a little bit to make sure that we're pointing out anything that's a major change.
And that alley loaded, that could be an option for Tower Drive because of it could be like 55 and older, whatever it is, apartment building. And then we had talked about like on the end potentially being like duplexes, but those could be alley loaded, right?
They could be alley loaded, yeah. And some of those alleys are a lot of times, in some communities, private, right? And
Yeah, private drives,
Are they sometimes,
They're both, yeah.
Yeah.
Homes in like Fitchburg.
yeah.
But then the homeowner is responsible for doing the snow plowing and all that stuff then, right? If it's
private.
Yeah, so. My concern is, and this is my big concern. I know some people that live by Red Bud Trail. And I think they are not opposed to having, development come in there. But I'm not entirely sure, considering some of them are a little bit on the older side, that they want a ton of people coming over there, with the noise and, kind of more of the activity. So I think we need to balance that to make sure that, the people, that we don't upset people that are already living in that particular area.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's that any different than the Highland Ridge neighborhood throwing a 3-story apartment complex surrounded by 17 houses on the Dingy property? So, I mean, like, we're already doing that.
Well, the nice about that one, though, is it put the apartment in the middle of it, and then it put the new single-family as a buffer between the existing single-family and that. So at least it was well thought out that
Right.
it didn't put an apartment in someone's backyard that was going to be surprised by
But
it.
Tower Drive is looking to do, 55 and older building plus some single family or duplexes or whatever. So how is that different?
In general, like things like that, that's where Mike, you kind of alluded to this whole idea of like, maybe some of this is coupled with maybe not going back to the drawing board, but remembering that this is all being informed by our master plan, our comp plan. And so, while this is changing, it doesn't suddenly turn everything into the Wild West. So, talking about Tower Drive, what's its zone now? What's its corresponding zoning going to be under the other code, right? Like you kind of brought up traffic or, all that kind of stuff. Well, our comp plan doesn't have or shouldn't have land uses incompatible with the available, say, street level of service or sewer level of service or any of that kind of stuff. So there's still hedges against those issues that are baked into how we do the comp plan. So
I've taken a little bit look at the zoning map and some of these draft zoning districts, and there's gonna be some things where, you know, we're gonna want to amend our future land use map probably to make it fit, rather than create a zoning district, put it somewhere where we don't really want it from a planning sense. So, you know, so there's just some things that it just, it's one of those things where you just have to amend that larger vision a little bit to make it work well. But right now, this Tower Drive property's been zoned R4 for a lot of years because it was partly a part of the nursing home, and that's multifamily.
And give us a little description of what R4 means. R4 might be
Multifam-
townhomes,
It can be single, duplex,
fourplexes.
or high-density residential, single,
Okay.
duplex, or multifamily.
Okay.
And I want to say
The live work units.
40 or 50-foot height limit.
Okay.
But nothing like that tall is being
All right.
proposed, or, you know, the city's not looking to do.
Right.
It's maximum two-story height.
Yeah, so is that what you're talking about? If you're gonna put a 55 and older apartment building on Tower Drive, then 2 stories? Because generally speaking, when you're talking about 55 and older, you have restrictions for, you're obviously gonna have elevator. You know, most people don't wanna necessarily deal with stairs and that kind of stuff. So is 2 stories the general plan? O'Brien?
We will, those proposals will come in December, and but the RFQ specifically listed 2-story.
Okay.
Because that was based on the public input.
Kind of, again, sort of zooming back out from a real specific proposal, maybe the question here to ask is, does the change in the zoning reg drastically change what would happen at that parcel or other similar parcels? Or
It depends
is there a fairly compatible?
It ultimately depends what new category it gets zoned. That, it's a detail thing.
Yeah.
And that can be adjusted when we create the new.
In other words, it's not zoned something now that's not going to allow that, and then the new zoning is going to be something wildly different than what's.
Right, so that zoning map that I mentioned that we go through, the first goal is, okay, what is the most similar?
Right.
And because we don't want to make a bunch of non-conforming uses, and we don't want to do a drastic down zone. For example, if someone is R4, we're going to take them all the way to ag, and now they can't do anything. And then we'll also look for up zones. There are going to be some instances of that, but we'll point those out, and then you try to minimize them, and I have to check, like you were saying, the comp plan for consistency. So there are some guardrails on that, but we go through parcel by parcel and look for those impacts.
But I think generally, I think what we're seeing here, we're seeing greater flexibility. And Sonia did a good job at trying to protect existing neighborhoods. I think 8,000 may not be the exact number we end up with, but I think it's close. You know, it's one of those things we do more fine-tune analysis to figure out what that is. Some of these districts have, go from 40 to 50 foot. You know, the mixed residential area, I think, goes from 40 to 50, I think. So there's some differences in height, but ultimately, some of these, are more likely to be, again, it's kind of like Sonia said, we try to find the closest one to that district, and then some areas are gonna, the undeveloped properties that's where you can kind of fit the newer, more intensive ones and find that flexibility. But I really like generally where this is going for the flexibility, modern development. And there's, she went through, minimum floor area, minimum lot size per, all these different things, the layers and layers of duplicative regulations that we're trying to accomplish kind of the same thing. We're simplifying things and making it easier for property owners to understand and easier for developers to come in and develop something of quality. So I think that really just it's a real breath of fresh air for David and I as we've gone through this.
Lot to digest. What are the next steps here? I mean, you laid that out. There's discussions with staff, sort of a pivot back to us at some point with more precise. At that point, you actually have a full document, right? At least the bones of it. Is there an additional, like, outside of this date and time working meeting?
For the plan commission?
Yeah,
Like a workshop?
Yeah, is that baked into this?
We have some, no, we haven't
Okay.
done that, but I think what we discussed in the beginning is if we need to do that, we could do that. You know, right now our agendas haven't been that heavy, so we haven't had to do that. And I think at some point here, we have some meetings in the contract. Van Wall can help us with joint council plan commission meetings. But even if we've hit our maximum number of meetings, it doesn't mean that staff can't do that with that. And I think at some point, I don't know if we're ready yet to go to council, to have a joint meeting yet. I think maybe another meeting here with plan commission, because we want to go with like enough of progress. We don't want to have like two plan commission types.
We're still in the guidance and development
Yep,
stage
yep.
here. We're not in the
So
dicker over language stage.
yeah.
So did you send us the PowerPoint? I didn't, I know the thing was 50 pages, and but I don't think the PowerPoint was
Your
included.
packet just included the tables, which I get
Yeah,
zoom in.
could we
and-
get
yep.
copies of the PowerPoint?
Absolutely, yep.
Because I think from based on your PowerPoint, I think I might have some questions. So then,
Yeah.
Mike, would you be the person that I would, if I have questions about stuff, I would
Sure.
want to send them to you, and
Sure.
then you guys can figure it out
Yeah,
or whatever?
yeah.
Because
You can
I feel like this is not my area of expertise.
If you want
and
to
I
send
feel
me
like-
questions or you want to meet in person, that's fine too.
Okay, because I just want to be able to make sure that we're understanding this, because I wouldn't hate for us to do something that's not going to be good 20 years from now.
Yep.
I think we've made, from a zoning administrator standpoint, I'm seeing a lot of advantages to how, the direction this is going. Before I know, she talked about stout houses and garages. I didn't hear anything necessarily from the plan commission on that, on regulating garages that are in front of the main part of the house. Is that something you want to get into designing, regulating, or not? That's kind of one of the things that in the bulk standards there.
Personally, I don't think a garage has curb appeal. That's my personal opinion. So does that necessarily mean that it needs to actually be put to the side? I mean, I know we have the front and then the garage is over here.
Some are even with the house.
Yeah.
Some are like Sonia mentioned, like some community has allows for 4 feet in front of, not like 24 feet in front of the house, but 4 feet in front of the house, right?
Yeah,
There's-
the newest, I think most flexible, you wouldn't think of City of Madison as necessarily being the most flexible, but they're having that 4 foot. So if you're trying to, 4 foot in front of the house. So if you're trying to have some limit, 4 feet is what they've gone to be a little bit more flexible. If you go with the hardest position of you must have your garage 2 feet behind the house, I think that's a perfectly fine policy decision that you could make, but then you're probably gonna have the first builder come in and say, I don't like that, change the code.
So I think they're trying to make garages bigger though, because I think when we actually had our house reassessed, they were even on the fence of giving us considered a 2-car garage because of the size of it. So is that where the 4 feet, having the extra 4 feet potential makes the garage a little bit bigger to make it a little bit, or is it just for
like-
some other reason?
Something to do with, if you have allow the garage to protrude 4 feet in front of the house, then you have the space behind the garage where it works better with a standard floor plan, where you have living space behind there. Whereas if you require it to be at the same plane, then, you know, the rectangular shape that most new houses try to achieve gets thrown
So,
off.
I
Yeah.
guess, as I've been thinking about this, if you have a 22-foot garage depth, provided you have a mid-sized car, you don't have a whole lot of space in front of the car. But if you want to use that garage for a lawnmower, snow blower, that kind of stuff, you need another 4 feet to get that space. So I think that's why that 4 feet
Yep,
is.
then you have 4 feet in front, then the depth aligned with the house is 20. And then if your whole house is like 30 feet deep, then, you know,
That's
So-
exactly what I was alluding to.
Yeah, it's that kind of
Okay.
stuff, and I like, you know, I like that, again, this is one of these things, it's like, just because, these are minimum and maximum standards, and just because we have minimum standards doesn't mean a developer is gonna come in and build to the minimum. And here we have, you know, we've seen, challenges in front setbacks that are 35 feet, and some of those extreme that were, rear and front setbacks have stopped people from doing additions to their homes because they haven't had any options. I've had several conversations with people over in the Brookside area and some of those kinds of things. But having like a 20-foot setback doesn't mean it's gonna be, homes are gonna be exactly at 20 feet. They could still be at 30 feet, but it just gives people an envelope to do what they wanna do without having to come for a planned unit development or something like that. So it's one of these things is you wanna give a reasonable building envelope for people to do what they wanna do without getting like, we're gonna design every aspect of your house.
So, getting back to the garage question.
Yeah.
Why is there a concern of the setback from the house, or in front of the house? What is the concern?
I think this was a really big concern after this style of housing was popular in the 90s and early 2000s. Like every new subdivision was garages were the first and only thing that you see. And the concern is that it's not as, you know, friendly to a pedestrian or, you know, neighborhood character. Traditional neighborhood design would have the garage way in the back detached, and you would see the front door and the porch, and you would have a sidewalk and a complete street. You know, it depends on if that's something that in your neighborhoods, new neighborhoods in Columbus, that you would want to require and encourage that type of design, or not.
Is there a safety, any concern? It's just aesthetics, or?
I mean, some people would argue, you know, if it's all garages, then people are gonna drive faster, and that creates a less safe neighborhood for kids that are walking in the street with no sidewalks.
I think it's a style and
Yeah.
character thing more than anything. I know my mom's hometown, she lives in a twin home neighborhood with all garages, and in Menominee Falls, after that went up, they said, too many garages. They just didn't, that community didn't like that. So then they added regulations where it had to be varied, or, you know, sometimes they call it anti-monotony standards. And it's not a right or wrong
Right.
thing. It's a Columbus thing. It's a Columbus value. What do you think, what does Columbus as a community think? Is that something that you really want to regulate? Is that a style and the character of your neighborhood you want to see? It's not a right or wrong answer. It's,
But
what do you
going-
want to be as a community?
I don't know if it's
But-
something
but-
we want to legislate, though.
Right, but going back to your statement, we're not gonna design your house and tell you everything you're gonna do with your house.
This
I'm-
is what you're here to do, is
Yep.
to create what your community standards and character are.
I kind of feel like
I've had my light
Sometimes-
on for a little bit now. Can
maybe,
I
you know,
speak?
what I personally would buy for myself, this almost feels like this might be a bit more of a step than I would want to legislate in this community. I feel like a builder can go within the bounds of what looks good and what his market and what his customers want, without necessarily putting this out there. I think this isn't a big Columbus problem.
Right, okay.
But, I mean,
Hey, yeah, Mike.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was looking over
My
this
light's
way.
been
I'm
on
sorry.
forever.
I didn't see ya.
And normally I'm not very patient, but I was patient. So I would like to note that.
You were.
It's very patient.
Well
So I
noted.
just want to call out on the garages is that if anybody's familiar with my house, I don't want to prevent my house from being able to happen. So when you look at my house, most people think I only have a 2-stall garage on my house, but I have a 1-stall garage that's off to the side that you cannot see the garage door if you look directly at the house. Technically speaking, the garage is in front of the house, but it is designed to where it looks like a part of the house. There's windows there, there's shutters or whatever. It looks
Is it
like
side
the rest of the house. You go up to my house and you could go straight into the 2-stall garage, or you kind of curve like this into a 1-stall. And there's multiple right in my area that do that, like my neighbor's house does that and stuff. And that's to prevent it looking like all garage. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to limit that creativity of being able to have the garages there, but not look like a garage.
My point exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I bought a house where my garage extends in front of my house. And if I'd buy another house, it wouldn't be that way.
What I'm generally,
You can't see the front of the house out of your front window.
what I'm generally hearing is that the idea of limiting, that it felt like a regression, right? We had all these great ideas of like opening things up, and then there was suddenly this drill down on this one particular issue to exclude it. I do feel like it's a problem that's probably already solved itself in the marketplace.
Right. Right.
So I don't know. And this thing about Madison having to change its standards.
To be more flexible.
Right. There was an innovation
Yeah.
in the housing industry. And there was a regulation that got in the way of that innovation, which is exactly what the rest of our code here is trying to avoid. Let's not get ourselves into it.
Oh,
And there's a certain
There we go.
spot for it because Redbud
Looks like the front of the
Trails,
house,
people
so
love
see
those
how it
houses.
curves.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But we wouldn't want half of our city
is a
to look
garage
like
right
that.
here.
But like you
A
said, I'm
third
pretty
garage.
sure that the industry and the wants and the needs from consumers have driven
Yeah.
it to not be that
Yep.
wild
If,
anymore.
if we're citing that this was popular 25 or
Yeah.
30 years ago, well, there you have your
Probably
answer.
gonna be a non.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
like
good.
on Highview Lane, there's plenty of homes with garages in the front that all look very nice. And that builder did a great job.
and there's some side in,
Well, that's,
side,
That
my
that
house
relive.
is on
Yep.
Highview
Yes.
Lane.
So-
That's what I don't want to restrict because that looks
Correct.
nice. They did a good
Yep.
job.
the challenge with that kind of curve, actually, that's a tighter curve than I would have expected, but yeah, you need wider lots, a little generally speaking, but
Oh, are you
that,
looking at my house?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because we want to see it. But yeah, it works.
Sidewalk shovel.
Stalker.
It's a quick, it makes the turn pretty well.
Yeah, it does actually. I mean, we just use it, like, we're not getting into how I use my garages, but we just use it for, it's our fun garage, you know,
Well,
so
and-
you're not going in and out of it every day, you know.
And as far as like the walkability, I mean, we do
So, okay.
require sidewalks, and it looks.
That's what I was just
helps
gonna
keep
say,
it
if
together
we
too, I
wanna
think.
have sidewalks, then we're gonna have, then the houses are, if we wanna have sidewalks in the neighborhood, then they're gonna have to, build accordingly, correct?
Yeah, but the setback is already behind where the sidewalk would go. Like sidewalks are all going in the right of way, and the setback is measured from the right of way, so it's not
Okay.
an issue.
Yeah, I think you summarized it well, and garage, just as an example, something like this doesn't have to become the headline of your zoning code rewrite, right? But it's just an example of that decision-making process of, do we want to do design regulation, and what do we care about community aesthetics, and how a number on the spreadsheet comes out to play in an image in a real situation. Okay.
Do we have a particular action you're looking for us to take other than saying
I
thanks
think
for all
we-
the awesome information? I mean,
I think we've got a pretty good direction
Yeah,
overall
yep.
of, you guys are generally feeling pretty comfortable. We'll maybe tweak some things, take a look, closer look at existing neighborhoods and, some of these things, but
Is
this is not like in stone. This is a working draft and, we'll send you the PowerPoint, the agenda for tonight. There is a HTML version where you can open up the individual files instead of going through the whole 60 pages or whatever it is, so you can open up one of those individual attachments, and sometimes that's an easier way to look at this stuff. So if you go to the agendas on the website, you can grab those links that way. But anyways, it was a really good conversation, and some good questions, and I think you're kind of, I guess I'm sensing kind of a consensus of a thought process, at least for the residential portion is, that let's create some good standards, but let's not get overly detailed in the requirements, so we can address the innovation and the development and the customers, the things that we can't anticipate in trends going forward for years to come. So I think that's the sense I'm getting from the commission tonight.
Thank you for all of your hard work.
Are you,
And I really appreciate it. And for future meetings, again, it's about the translation of your presentation to us. And this packet here did not do you justice.
Okay.
And what I can do too is, I know it's tough at a meeting to look at some of these things, and we can break it down other ways. But I can send out in the packet, in the email, when you get the digital packet, I'll send that HTML link where you can look at the individual files, because that is, I prefer to look at the agendas and the packets using that link rather than scrolling through the whole pages. But I'll include that because I think that's when you review things prior to the meeting, that's because you can jump around and going back and forth without scrolling through all that.
Yeah,
So
I think
that's-
the majority of us are the type of people that we want to be able to understand too. So, I mean, who knows? You could have been talking to a group of people, they're just like, yeah, just do whatever. I don't think we're necessarily, not all of us are necessarily like that on our little commission.
And this is a very critical opportunity in the
Right.
city of Columbus. This has been needed for a long time. And for us to be engaged is what you want,
Yep, noted.
right?
From a council member's perspective, I love to hear, as much as it may be like a negative, I love to hear that the packet wasn't exactly right to review it, because that means people are reviewing it before we're meeting. And I absolutely love that, especially because we're really trying to drive the committees and the commissions doing that legwork, having that knowledge, then making the recommendation to council, and not council having to look line by line by line. We check out, we look what we want to look at, and we trust our committees and our commissions to do the work. So I just want to say that I appreciate everybody that found it frustrating, because that means you were looking at it and you were researching into it, and it is very helpful to council.
Well, I think the key to that is that people need to come engaged, and they need to go through it. I think from my perspective, I get really impatient if people have questions that it's like right in front of you, like, well, how did you not know that? It's like right there in black and white, so coming prepared is a huge thing, so.
I appreciate the feedback. Yep.
are you planning on being here in December?
I don't think that part one will be ready by then, especially to make sure that we have it presented in a way that's digestible. So I don't think that's the plan.
That was what I was hoping you were gonna say, because, but I think, like, if you don't mind, Mike, keep this on the agenda for December. That way, if sort of after
That's what I was
looking at,
thinking too.
looking at the PowerPoint and maybe looking at
More
this,
questions.
we at least, we have a space of
Yes.
time to
Yep,
discuss.
it'll be on the agenda
Great.
again,
Yeah,
and
these are
Right.
for us, right, yeah. I
So,
love that.
okay.
that's, because this is, I tell you that when I first was looking at that bulk chart, my head was, I was like, it's a lot, but then, I would look at it for a while, do something else, go back to it, and then it started to kind of,
You can't look at it in a whole.
no, you can't.
I
If you look
can't.
at it in a whole, your eyes cross.
And so, it took me, some time to kind of break it down, and I kind of know how our existing code works pretty well, and trying to translate what's well, and I'm feeling really pretty good about where things are going. I just see a lot of like reducing, things, multiple regulations that are doing the same thing and those kinds of things. It just, I think the direction we're going, we're gonna, when developers and property owners come in, they're gonna see it as a much friendlier code. And
yeah.
fewer conditional uses is one of the key parts in this.
I'm looking forward to having a framework where, like, I have a lot of confidence right now that, look, even if it doesn't get written right here, right? Even if there's maybe something that we discover sometime after the fact that leaves a little bit to be desired, it feels like this is open to adaptive management, whereas the old code was like, it had no direction, had no philosophy behind it, had no,
Right.
dare I use the word vector, I don't know. But it, like,
Right.
we have a direction on this,
Right.
and even if we find out something isn't quite working, I think we'll still have that same momentum and philosophy
It's
to carry
certainly-
us through a needed minor change.
The code certainly didn't implement our comprehensive plan.
Right.
And so I think this
Yeah.
moves in that direction, and a lot of kudos to you for, I think one of the hardest thing from a regulation standpoint when you're trying to achieve all these things is to make it simple enough but effective enough to achieve the vision and the plan. And I think what you came give is a really good start.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, you've been congratulated to death. Thank you very much.
We're at number 6.
Yes, we'll move on to number 6. Consider and take action regarding the Roberts Minor Land Division in town of Elba. This is an extraterritorial zoning power that we have. Mike, I'll just run right through this. This is Elba Heights Land Division,
Yeah, there's-
and it's outside the city, but since it's close enough to the city, the county is inquiring our opinion.
Yes, and so this is a little neighborhood, just east, across the river, just south of 73. It's an existing kind of residential neighborhood in the town of Elba. It's a minor land division, it's a small split. And when we think about these extraterritorial things, we don't have anything in our code that addresses how we think about this kind of stuff. We don't have anything in our comprehensive plan. If we think about general planning terms, we think about, how would a minor split like this impact the growth of the city? It doesn't. It's already a subdivision, it's already there. So there's like really no negative impact to the city for this, but they've asked for a recommendation for the plan commission.
Recommendation of what? Annex?
No.
Is this land split in the town of Elba a negative thing for the city or a positive thing? So what we're looking for is a recommended approval of this land split, or,
I think it's a non-objection. They're looking for us
Yeah.
to register an objection or a non-objection.
Yeah.
And so we'd recommend to council to not object to this land division.
if so, yeah. And there's just,
All right, well, I will move to approve the Roberts Minor Land Division in the town of Elba. Recommend approval to council for the Roberts Minor Land Division in the town of Elba. And I'm gonna say that wrong, extraterritorial zone.
You did it. Nice job.
I'd second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Please let council know we've recommended approval. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
We need to work on our flare, guys.